You're listening to the Voice for Business podcast, episode 74. In today's episode, I am sharing with you how to enhance your voice in front of a microphone. That's coming up next.
Ready to learn what it means to have a voice for business? To utilize your voice to create the influence, impact, and income you desire. Join me, Katherine Beck, voice actor and voice coach, as I show you how to show up and stand out as the voice of your business. Learn my best tips on how to uncover your true voice, to speak with authority, and establish a personal connection to your audience that will leave them wanting to hear more. This is the Voice for Business podcast.
All right. Hello, everyone. I have had a couple of weeks off of the podcast. I've been very busy. I was launching my American accent program for actors. That's called All American Voice. It is now done. I can relax and I can breathe and just enjoy a little bit of downtime. It was busy. I do a 5-day challenge. So every day I am live on Facebook in the Facebook group with my actors, taking them through the challenge on how to master the American accent so they can book U.S. roles. And it was great. And the following week we are opening the cart. We got 4 days open and it's just boom, boom, boom. You know, it's a lot of being present, being on, pivoting when you need to pivot, right? But it went well. It's a lot of energy as those that are online entrepreneurs like me who occasionally do a live launch, you know what it's like, right? So I just needed a moment. And it gave me a chance to realize some things as well. And tell me if you can relate to this, that this year I found that now having 2 programs, I've got my Voice for Business program. I've got my All-American Voice program. So one is geared more towards voice and how to utilize and enhance your voice for the purposes of business. So that could be, you know, if you're a personal brand, an entrepreneur, you have a business, you work for a business, you are on live stages, you're on virtual stages, however you use your voice in business. That's what my Voice for Business program is all about. But then I also have my American accent program, and that is more towards learning the American accent and how to bring it into your performance. So 2 totally different programs. And then now I've got 2 podcasts. Again, one geared towards business, using your voice in your business. And then the other one is more geared towards my actors and how they master the American accent to book U.S. roles. So I found myself this year with double the workload, double the everything, double the podcast, double the programs, double the audiences. And I thought, oh boy, it's starting to get to me. I'm feeling the overwhelm setting in. And if I don't do something quick, I'm going to go into burnout. I'm going to cause myself to be stressed, overworked, overwhelmed, and stop enjoying what I do, which is the whole purpose of being an entrepreneur, isn't it, right? To, work for yourself, do what you love, create the freedom that you want in your business. And so I realized that instead of building that business that I wanted, that worked for me and with, the outcome that I wanted to, that I had created a monster for myself, 2 businesses basically. And how could I consolidate this, streamline what I do to make it easier for myself? So I'm in the process of figuring that out because it is a process. And I think I am a work in progress. I'm always learning about myself, what works for me, what doesn't. And that's what I learned in this launch. I think every time I do a launch, I learn a little bit more about myself, which is so cool. And in this launch, the lesson that I got was to create my business by my design, to really start to work with what works for me. How do I enjoy working? What are the things that I enjoy doing? Instead of just building a business that gives me the freedom, to work for myself, I realized I needed to fall back in love with what I do and to create the business that I love, that I want, really design it, catered to me and my needs and my desires. And that was a big lesson. I really got it this time. And I'd be curious to know from you if you've been in a similar position as me. Because every single time I launch, and it's interesting when you do something over and over and over again. So I've run this 5-day challenge at least, I think, 5 times now. And so it's a similar format every time. There's not much that really changes, but yet the lessons are always so different. And I think that my favorite part about that is the debrief. It's that moment afterwards where you can pause and reflect and really think about what worked, what didn't, and what you want to do moving forward. So that's where I'm in right now, is really thinking about what do I want to do moving forward. And there's been some really big aha moments for me, and it's revolved around Voice for Business. The whole reason why I created Voice for Business in the first place was to fulfill a greater purpose of helping others find their voice and sharing it with the world, sharing your powerful message, your vision with the world, and feeling confident doing that. And I realized that that purpose is so far greater than me, and that this program that I have created is so much bigger than me, and that I'm so excited of the possibility of working with so many different types of business owners or personal brands. Anyone who uses their voice in their business and wants to really feel comfortable using their voice in their business, and going from speaking to a local audience to a global audience. And if you're working online in the digital space, then you already know this, that the capabilities and the possibilities for you are limitless. If you've gone from offline to online, then you've already gone from local to something that's a little bit more scalable. But often what we don't consider is we start with our country, and then sometimes we don't even consider or don't know how or don't realize the possibilities of going global. You've got that right in front of you. That computer screen can set you up for working with a global audience. And that is my passion, to help you understand that there are no boundaries when it comes to your voice, your message, and being a visionary for yourself, for you being a personal brand. And so I realized the other day that that's so empowering for me to be able to do that for others, and yet scary at the same time. When you open yourself up to being accessible to a much greater audience, it's a little bit scary, because it really sets you up as a leader and not backing down from being a leader. And it's exciting, and I wanted to share that with you. My aha moments that I had in the past couple of weeks while I was away. I wasn't really away, but I was away from the podcast. So anyway, food for thought for all of us. I digress. Today we are talking about mouth noises. It's such a funny thing. That's like the worst transition. But this was something that came through in a review, and I mentioned in the last podcast episode that I was going to talk about that this next episode. And it's about, more the quality, the experience, the technique behind producing a really great quality sound with your voice in front of a microphone. And there are little sort of tips and tricks that I can share with you, and I'm happy to do that. So let's dive into that. Now, I've strategically not had any water recently. I had coffee not that long ago, so I was hoping that I would have some mouth noises to offer you so you could hear what it sounds like when you've got these silly or annoying little extra sounds in your recording. And yeah, it's not that appealing to the listener, is it? Can we edit it out? Yes and no. It's not always the easiest thing to edit out, and it might require you to do an extra take or two as you're speaking or recording. If something sounds just way too overbearing to the recording, it really gets in the way. But let's talk about why you get these mouth noises and then how to reduce them or overcome them. So How I foresee that you get mouth noises, the most common one, I think, and this is the most common for me, is if you're a coffee drinker or even a tea drinker and you drink it with milk. It's that milk that creates that mucusy sounds in your mouth, which are not so desirable in front of the microphone. So if you drink coffee or tea with milk, totally fine, but try to avoid it right before recording a podcast or jumping on somebody else's podcast or anytime you might be using a microphone, because it will pick up on those little clicky or mucusy mouth sounds. So if you do, it's not the end of the world. There are a couple of things that you can do to reduce some of that mouthiness. One, obviously, is drinking water. Hydrating is going to help reduce some of that mucusy sort of sounds and whatnot. Another thing you can do, and this is a great thing to have handy, pop in your fridge so you always got it on board, is a green apple. A slice of green apple can do the trick. So there's something in the green apple that actually helps to reduce those mouth noises. And this is an old voiceover trick that I learned many, many years ago. And I know that if for whatever reason I'm recording and it feels a little bit mucusy or whatever, I just go and I have a slice of green apple, and that really helps do the trick. A couple of other things you could do. So another reason why you might have mouth noises, you might actually have the opposite. It might be a dry mouth. Maybe you haven't had enough water and you need to hydrate. So chewing gum can be really beneficial as well to get that saliva working in your favor. But things that you want to avoid so that you don't have that dry mouth, obviously, like I said, you want to drink water, but avoiding salty foods before you record as well, because the sodium is going to dry out the mouth. So being really mindful about what you eat and drink prior to recording is one of the bigger things to do to reduce those possibilities for mouth noises. Now, when you're recording, it's always great to have a bottle of water nearby. I also enjoy a peppermint tea. So whenever I'm doing a voiceover session, if I go to a studio and they say, "Would you like a coffee?" Which I always think is the funniest thing whenever I go to a studio and they offer the voiceover talent coffee, because surely they must know that we should not be drinking the coffee with the milk, but that's all right. It's totally fine. Instead, what I will have is a peppermint tea. The peppermint gives you a little boost of energy, I find. Maybe it's psychological. And the tea, the warmness is really soothing to my throat, to my voice. I like it. And so I'll usually have like some sort of herbal tea, like a peppermint tea. Now, other mouth noises you might have might be those p, p, p. Can you hear it? P, 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 p. I'm trying to get really poppy with my P's in front of the microphone. This microphone's pretty good with my P's, with my plosives, with my pops, but it depends, In some cases, like some microphones, I could be more poppy with my P's, and you may be too. So what I recommend is something called a pop screen. It's a very simple device, looks like a little screen, and it goes right in front of your microphone. So what it does is it acts as a barrier between you and the microphone and those plosive sounds so that it's not it's not so poppy. So I would definitely recommend trying out the pop screen and see how that affects your overall voice production. All right, so that is the plosives. Other sort of distracting mouth sounds or noises, well, your breath is one. And a couple of things I want to mention about your breath when you're in front of a microphone. Number one is breath support. And I don't think we consider that enough. If you're breathing from that shallow breath, where you're not really taking those fully supported breaths, if you're breathing from your upper chest instead of down from your diaphragm and lower belly, you're gonna breathe more often, and chances are it's gonna be more audible. So you wanna start focusing on your breath support. And when you breathe, try avoiding taking big, audible types of breaths. Breathe comfortably, breathe naturally, but just watch the audible factor to your breath. Now, breaths is something that you can edit out of a podcast, for example, but we want to get in the habit of starting off with great vocal production so that we're not relying on the editor to do everything for you to enhance your overall vocal performance. And so it starts with you. If you are nervous as well, that's going to get in the way of your breath. So giving yourself time to center yourself, to be present, to relax, whatever it is that you like to do to calm those nerves and feel more comfortable in front of the mic before you start speaking, do it. So breathing is really key before you start a podcast, for example, and that's going to help reduce some of those unnecessary breathy noises. And also a great warm-up. Warming up your body, your breath, and your voice, your mind. When you have a really solid warm-up, and again, it doesn't have to be long, that's going to really help you reduce some of those unnecessary sounds. That will also help with things like filler words, because when you set yourself up in your mind, your body, your breath, and your voice, you will find that you start to reduce or minimize or not use all of those filler words or those ums and the ahs. They start to go away. All right, so that is pretty much all the tips. There's one final thing that I did want to mention that's going to help you reduce those mouth noises, and it's reviewing your performance. And the reason why I mention that is because quite often we're not doing that, and we're not learning from our past performances. So anytime you speak on stage and it's recorded, or you're in front of a microphone recording a podcast, or you're filming a YouTube video, or you're on an Instagram Live or a TikTok, you need to get into the habit of reviewing your performance, watching, listening, critiquing, and working from that place of what went well and what you can do to improve your overall performance. And when you do that, again, it's a learning experience like I was talking about in the beginning of the podcast. When you can debrief like that, then you know how to enhance your performance for the next time, how to increase performance, how to increase engagement, increase conversions through your voice, through your performance. But we need to start doing that. So that is one of my tips to reducing mouth noises, is to understand why those mouth noises are occurring in the first place. And you got to be watching your work and listening to your work so you can know why that's actually happening. All right, that is it from me this week. I will be back next week. No more rest for me. I am rejuvenated, ready to go. So thank you so much for tuning in. And hey, if you are out there and you're thinking, I am ready to focus on my mind-voice connection and start utilizing my voice in my business, then let's get the conversation going. I'm actually going to be hosting a free masterclass in a few weeks. And if you want to learn how to show up and speak up and stand out as the voice of your business, then go ahead and join me. You can register at katherinebeck.com/masterclass, and I will see you there. And if you've been listening to this podcast and loving what you hear, do me a favor, click the subscribe button. If you haven't yet done so, tap those 5 stars and leave a review and let me know what you think of the podcast. And if you do, you'll be featured right here on the show. So if you're loving this podcast and this episode, go ahead and leave us a review. And coming up next week on the show, I'm going to be talking to Courtney Elmer, who is the host of the globally ranked podcast, the Systems Made Simple podcast, and CEO and founder of The Effortless Life. We're going to be talking all things podcast and how she found her voice in business. That's coming up next week. Now, make sure to share the show with all your friends. Let them know what's coming up next week and invite them to tune in with you and learn how to speak up, show up, and stand out as the voice of your business. Until then, go on, get out there and use that powerful voice of yours. And I'll see you back here next time.